Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Shay coming back at y'all with another episode of the Emmaus Proposition. Y'all know how we do over here at the Emmaus Proposition, man. Like, we take something in culture, in movies, or whatever we see in everyday life, and we weave our way back to Jesus. Because over here we believe that everything we do, everything is from Him, through Him, and to Him. And so we just talk about normal life, how it leads back to Jesus, and hopefully these conversations are encouraging for all of you to start thinking about Jesus in a similar way. Like, there should be nothing that we think about that doesn't have a hint of the gospel to it. So with me today, for those of you listening on the podcast, I brought some friends over. We have Tony and Jenny, and of course, my wife. And we just wanted to come through. We've been lucky to have them as friends for a long time, and we really had some really good conversations over the years. And so we wanted to have them on, chop it up a little bit, see how we can bring it back to Jesus, and hopefully y'all can get something out of the conversation. So if y'all hear like a bunch of craziness in the background, like we got 5 kids between us, and like we're trying to keep them quiet, but it's probably not gonna work. So y'all might hear some craziness going on in the background. We're gonna try to keep it rolling. If y'all see some like weird it's because I like had to chop some stuff out and rearrange. Anyway,
there was most likely a toddler that came in.
Yeah, there's gonna be some. There might be some kids in the background.
For a minute.
We're trying our best.
Yeah.
Y'all don't get mad at us, but we'll let Tony and Jenny introduce themselves. Tony, tell them where you're from and what's your background a little bit.
So yeah, I guess born in LA, but I'm from Reno. Lived here forever. Been a Christian now since I was, I guess, 18 years old is when I became a Christian, right out of high school. Been married 12 years, got kids, family. Was a pastor for a short minute. Been a deacon. Been a part of churches for a long time. Been a part of different community groups, different things, So had a chance to do a lot of things at a very young age. Been very fortunate for that. So
cool.
Yeah.
Definitely. And then what? You just basics?
Yeah.
Okay.
Who are you and what do you want people to know?
Yes. So born and raised here in Reno, but my family also has some property in a little town of Montana. So half the year here, half the year up north. I've had a ranch, cattle, irrigation, alfalfa, the whole 9 yards. So that was eventful. Yeah, we met here. We've been best friends since we were kids. We kind of have a nice little love story, which is cool. Not very many people get that, but I feel like we were lucky in that. But yeah, we got married young, jumped into ministry real young, and now we're just kind of pressing pause a little bit on that and focusing on community and just where we're going to go in this next season of life.
I don't know what y'all... Jenny tried to drop a little cold word on what we were talking about tonight, because we were sitting around and we're like, man, we have so many different conversations. What would be a good topic for us to kind of talk about that is fruitful, that we could bring back to Christ? And we talked about, we were going to talk about marriage. Maybe we could talk about kids. Maybe we could talk about movies and stuff. But really, I wanted to explore... So when we initially met you guys, Christina and I, you guys had already been in ministry for a while. And then you were leaving the church that you were part of for how long?
Essentially my whole life, pretty much, at least my whole life. And then...
I started there when I was 12, maybe?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were there for, we'll say, like a solid, faithful 10 years.
About 10 years.
Yeah.
So a decade. They put a full decade into the church. They made you guys leaders. Tony, you were a pastor. And some church hurt happened. You guys left there. And then you guys came to our community group. Right. And really our community group at the time was the best thing popping.
Yeah.
And it was cool, y'all. Like it was like we were loving each other, we were feeding each other. And you guys popped into a community group like that. And I think it was a time of healing for you guys, though we'll chop that up a little bit as far as what that meant for y'all. But tell me about what community looked like for you guys at the church that you were a part of previously before you left there. Like, what did it look like for the Fellowship of the Saints in you guys' old church?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Because I think in some ways I didn't know what it was supposed to look like. Basically everything we did revolved around the church. We were always going to church, Sundays for church, Tuesday night Bible studies, monthly prayer meetings, men's meetings, women's meetings, youth camp, all these different things, events that the church would put. That's just what we did. Everything we did revolved around the church. And it was very much, instead of the church being outward with its outreach, like going out to the community, it was a lot inward. Mm-hmm. We're going to do it here and open up our doors and you'll come. And that wasn't always the most effective thing. It was a lot of, yes, we had a very tight-knit community, but there wasn't a lot of new people coming in. Mm-hmm. Not really. Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames, things like that.
I'm sorry, Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames?
Yeah.
What is that?
You need to Google it.
What is that?
You should.
What is that?
Yeah, it's like, I guess like a play.
It's a play.
For like Revelation. So it's like starts and it's like super intense, dramatic, and like it's like a theatrical play. But yeah, so essentially it's about like it starts off with these people and they're like always like in the struggle of like, do I sin? Do I not sin? Well, then they die. They die. And then the next scene is them like at the gates of heaven, and or at the gates of hell? Yeah, at hell. So essentially they have this moment with Jesus, and it's very serious. It like shines over and somebody's playing Jesus and he's got like a big book and he opens it and they're like, Jesus, let me come in. Jesus, and then he either goes, and like they come in and they give him a hug. That's exactly what happened. Or he'd be like, and like point to hell, and then like the demons would come out and grab them and
take them away. And
super
very
90s.
Dramatic.
But let me tell you, when you're little, that's actually, believe it or not, though, kind of a little touchback on my childhood. So our old pastor used to be my mom's insurance agent, and he invited my mom to that play. And that's actually where my mom became a Christian, and that's how we started going to church.
Wow.
Yeah.
So obviously it's effective.
Yes. And so a little weird because, like, again, it's such an extreme thing, but like, that's where our walk with Jesus started.
Wow.
And that's how the church did most everything. Was just very much, we're going to do it for our little community. We'll open our doors up to anybody. Where I would always ask questions. It's like, but we don't do a very good job telling people that. We're doing something.
Yeah.
Like we used to do a harvest party instead of Halloween. Mm-hmm. Do a harvest party.
Yeah.
Which I get it, right?
And they're looking at me because they know I got problems with that stuff.
So whatever, we do a harvest party, but it would always be like we would do it on the night of Halloween, but inside the church.
Yeah.
And we hit this moment where in our church where we were kind of asking this question, like, how do we build community? Like, how do we grow the church? Like, how come new people aren't coming in? And I kind of threw it well, we don't do anything like that's a part of the community. So we started doing these trunk or treats.
Oh boy, yeah.
And that was my idea. I was like, hey, what if we try this out, see what happens? And weirdly enough, it took off.
Yeah.
Because we did it in the parking lot. People would be driving by and stop. Or, candy? We got tons of candy. Mm-hmm. And
we set up games. And, like, we had pony rides one year. Like, it was crazy.
Yeah. Somebody brought Bryce brought his horses. And took kids around for rides. Nice. And got a tractor with hay on it. And so community at our old church was very, I don't know, it was very much production based.
This way, but.
Very much production based. Very much. Open the doors, build it, they will come, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it was very outward. That would be my 2 cents, I think.
So I think the intention was super good for the community, but it just never really came to fruition. There's points where we would go hand out flyers, or I think for a second, like when we were little, they were like trying to do commercials for a minute. And I think there was even a second where they were on TV as well. I think just for a quick minute, like when I was younger.
The strength team.
Oh, and the strength team would come. So it was just very different. I think a lot of it was there are things that were super successful in the 80s, and I think we wanted to just keep doing those same things, which didn't always work. But like Tony was saying, there was definitely a point though, like when you were in that church, like you were loved. Like there was never a second that we struggled with anything. I mean, if we just whatever the case was, I mean, the church was there. Like we could call whoever and it would get taken care of, and we would go help whoever and it would get taken care of. So, like once you were in, like it was real tight, real tight.
It was only a couple hundred people.
Yeah.
Just big enough to kind of be big, but just small enough to where everybody knew everybody.
Yeah.
So.
But we did everything. I mean, sound, worship, kids, youth.
We had a moving ministry for when people move.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
But for the most part,
you need that.
That was real.
Yeah.
For the most part,
Food pantry.
community was centered around like the church, and like the identity was the church for the most part. Is what you guys saying?
Yeah.
Christina, you have a salvation story that's a little bit different because you came to Christ a little bit later. So how did you see community coming in to faith a little bit later on?
Community for me was totally different because we were moving to a new place. We had just moved to Reno, and we were in with a bunch of people we didn't know, a bunch of couples. We were just newly married. We only knew one other couple that was there, like, really well. And everybody else, we had, I think, 5 couples in this community group. And, you're being really intimate with people. And we were like, I don't know what church looks like. I don't know you people. I don't share my story with people. You know what I mean? That was kind of
strangers.
Yeah. And we were going to a big church at the time, but we were new to church.
Yeah.
And so the whole thing was just weird. It was just different. But everybody was really cool and they were all on the same page, relatable and stuff. We didn't have kids at the time and everybody else had kids. So that was kind of set us apart a little bit where, they just want you to be the babysitter, which I'm sure you guys had some of that.
We had some of that.
Well, I would say only because we offered, though. I mean, I don't think we were ever... I mean, for the most part, we were
we were kind to offer too, but don't take advantage, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like there were some of those times where they just assume that you're young and got a lot of energy and you don't have any kids of your own. So so
there's kind of truth in that, though.
At
least for us.
No, we were selfish. I mean, no, for us, we were young and selfish. So I want that time for us. We were just married.
Yeah.
So, community looked a little different, but I feel like we gained friendships out of that because we did more than just, talking about church and stuff. Like we did life together. We would, eat a meal together. We would have game nights. I remember shortly after we had joined, there was a show at the time, and it was like a fixer-upper kind of show. And this one couple was leaving, and they were going out of the country to see his family. And so they thought it was a great idea because we were still going to use their house for community. And so what we did is we went in and we redid their whole master bedroom. So pulled everything out. Do you remember that? Renee and Adolfo's house? I do remember. So we went in and we helped. We barely knew this couple.
Yeah.
But they were opening their home to us, and we were always on board to do something like that. So we went in and we redid their whole entire master bedroom and just repainted it, got new chairs and made everything look so super nice. And they came home and were surprised and blessed, wow, I can't believe you guys have done this. And
that's when not Fixer Upper, but Trading Spaces.
Yeah, Trading Spaces was originally up with Ty Pennington and all that.
We thought we were.
Yeah, we all thought we were onto something there.
Forgot about that.
So, I mean, that was cool, though, to be able to bless people in that way where it's, an intimate space. Who's going to go into somebody's house and, just redo up one of their rooms, right?
That's really nice.
So, that was cool just to do that. And I feel like there was some other serving opportunities, where we would go and collect a bunch of stuff for Hug High. Actually, we did a huge donation. where we went in and everybody donated blankets and toiletries and clothes and all kinds of stuff. And we put everything together in all these packets at the church. And then we, as a group, a bunch of different community groups, took it over to Hug High and were able to bless all the kids with it because there was a ton of kids that were homeless over there. So that was really a unique opportunity. And I feel like that was kind of where we really sunk into wanting to serve the community more, and not just our group community, but
yeah, no,
the
and
community.
It's different.
Yeah,
It's
it
very
is
different.
because we can serve ourselves because this is easy, right? We're friends. We can talk all day long, but to be able to go out and serve people that are less fortunate and people that are in need, there can be an awkwardness there, or there can be just a fear, or there can be I don't want to do that with my time. Whatever the case is that stops us from doing those things, I think that really pulled us in. And that's why when you guys joined our community group, we were like, let's do service because we want to care for people outside of our home.
Yeah.
Because that's how we, bring people to know who Jesus is, right?
Right.
So yeah, it's interesting because obviously the four of us are Christian believers, and so we've been introduced to church. We know what the Bible says about the importance of community and things like that. But as we look at the world has a different, so I'm going to pose it to you guys. Do you think the world has a different definition for what community looks like? And if so, like, how do you think that plays itself out?
It seems like we've talked about this a lot, how the world seems to be unaware of the community that it wants, right? So they don't want church, but they do want community.
Yeah.
That's why you have gangs. That's why you have motorcycle clubs. That's why you got softball teams. That's why you got, your bar guys. You meet down at the bar every week, whatever. Like, I think people do long for community. They want it without church. They want it without, because maybe it doesn't fit, right? Maybe they come to church and they got tattoos and they're kind of a little different looking, and they get those looks when they walk in a building and they're like, well, I don't want to be here, so let's go get somewhere else. I think I even see it like with the military guys. Like they've got their group of dudes that they'll be with, their support group, but you may not find them sitting in a church building always. So I do think people long for community. I just don't think they realize that the brotherhood there, like when you look at a motorcycle club and they've got vests that identify, you've got prospects because you have to earn your way in, and then there's like a ceremony when you are brought in, and it's like it's this brotherhood, it's a thing. But then they do barbecues and they do outings and toy drives and all these different things, and I'm like, that's community.
Yeah.
No, it's a motorcycle club because we're tough guys. I'm like, nah, it's community.
Yeah.
And then you bring your kids into it because now, usually it's a bunch of dudes that start out young, and then as they get older, the families grow, and then it becomes a very family-based thing. And I'm like, you guys, like that's what you want.
Yeah.
Like it's what you're trying to build, and I think we've talked about that a lot, like how we've seen that, like that. It just when people don't have it, they're lost, they're miserable, they're depressed, and they don't realize that they need people around them. But when they find that thing that gives them that acceptance, like gangs, like when young men don't have fathers, but then here's this father figure in a gang that can give them the affirmation. I think that's what like brings young men into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and now that it becomes a community thing. Where on the outside looking in, it's gang, it's violence, it's chaos, it's a bad thing. But when you really break down the psychology of it and like what's going on the inner workings of it, it's usually a lot of broken people looking to belong somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so now there's this thing that develops.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah, agreed. I think I think community, like when you think of it like in the outside world, right? I say outside, but like in the secular view, it's like, again, you're just looking for a group of people who think just like you do.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to find those people on whatever level that may be, and it's going to be the way that you think, or you just find a different place to go.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I feel like in Christian community, there is a lane for the most part that we
Sure.
would stay
Yeah.
in.
I would just add to what you were saying in that people want community, like they're designed for community, if you will. Like God has put us in a place where we need other people around us. But also, like it's no different than what we have here. We get together, our kids go play, we barbecue, you know, have a drink, whatever. We're all getting here in community. It's no different except for that at the base of ours is a belief in something that they may not have. But foundationally, outside of God, they want the same thing that God has designed them for.
Right.
And so it's inertly inside them that they want that community, but they just don't know why.
Sure.
They would rather say, I deny that reasoning because I don't want to be in a church. Because they've seen people that are in churches that they're like, you're fake. I don't believe in that because you're not walking the walk. You're not talking. You're talking all this out your mouth, but you're not showing it over here. Or you're being too judgmental or whatever.
And I think that's one thing that those types of communities have that maybe sometimes the church doesn't have. Right? It was like those communities are quick to call each other out when there's BS. They're quick to put it on the table and deal with it. Whereas sometimes in a church, like things get hidden, things get pushed aside, reputations can't be harmed. So a lot of people don't want to be a part of a church because, it's hypocritical. And I've heard that. And I don't get mad at people when they say that anymore. I used to. I'm like, well, everybody's hypocritical. So you're going to hate one group and not the other type thing. But like, the more I think about it, I'm like, no, I see what you're saying. There's certain things where I'm like, man, you know, maybe the church community could be better at certain things that I even look to the world like, man, you guys do that well. And we don't.
What's one of those things you think?
Well, just one of like what I was just talking about right now. I think sometimes like even in the workplace, I've noticed people are a little bit quicker to like call somebody out when they're not like towing the line or something like that, and then have these discussions about it. But sometimes I think in church settings that it's hard because I think we overthink it almost. Well, we don't want to hurt the feelings, that we don't want to rub some wrong. We don't want to lose them, right? I don't know how many times I don't know if I want to say that. Like, but what if they don't come back? I guess that's could happen, but it may not happen. You may actually build an atmosphere where, maybe it's a little messy at first, but the respect comes later, right? Like, not every situation that you deal with abruptly is comfortable in the moment, but you're trying to build credibility for the long run. That the duration of the relationship and the community will grow over time.
I think back to when you asked who's a good group that does that, right? So I think to touch back on the military, I think the military, even though it may not be perfect in this area, there is a sense of brotherhood among all of the veterans that is crazy to me. They can be completely different walks of life, even served in different departments in different places of the world, but there is still a sense of community and loyalty that I see with them. And that's impressive. Because I'm most of the time at churches, if you go to a different church, we don't like you, which is crazy. But then these people who are not Christians, and most of them don't want to be Christians, are like, yeah, come on over.
So what do you think that is then? So I would say that because Christ is what it means to be truly human, it would make sense to me that his bride is what it means to be a true community. To me, those two things seem associated, right? Why is it, do you think, that the world, in often cases, does better at community than the church does? Because you were saying, sometimes we see the church down the street, and you're like, oh, you go to that church.
Right.
And there's this snobbery.
Oh, yeah.
Why do you think the world is doing better at community than the church does at community?
I think partially because, as Christians, we're set as a higher standard, right? We're supposed to be this
the light on the hill,
forgiving people that just sees love and grace and all these things. And so if we don't learn how to talk to people with that love and grace, because Jesus didn't not call people out. He called people out, but he did it in a way that we could still be friends afterwards. I'm doing this because I care about you. Not because I'm judging you, but I feel like people look at Christians and are like, you're just judging me. So they already think, as a Christian, you're judging me. And so we get this, we talked about this the other night. We've got this book of rules, right? And so we think we're better.
Mm.
We set ourselves above everybody else because we think what we believe is right.
Yeah.
But you look at like other, not just clubs and stuff, but families, like different cultures. Sure. Different cultures of people are close knit, and it doesn't matter because we're family, we're blood, right? Biker clubs, they may not share blood, but they have shared some things together. Yeah. Or military people, right? They have shared life together in a way that has bonded them forever.
Yeah.
And I don't think that Christians have necessarily done that. We don't walk through life and struggle together because we'd rather sit on our sidelines and not talk about our struggles.
Right.
Now, I'm not talking about us because we've all talked about our struggles openly with each other. But that's why we're so close now, right? So if we were doing something wrong, I would hope that you guys would call us out on it, right? Because we're close like that. We're good friends. Or likewise. But I think that because we all like to put on this nice, pretty face, that we don't open up and we're not genuine with our community.
Yeah. I think that's something that, like, you speaking of, like, the military community, like, I'm a little jealous of. Is like, I think a lot of times those guys and girls, sorry, those people,
those folks,
those folks, they're
such
putting,
a sexist.
I know, my bad. I'm working on it. But I feel like they're put in situations where they're not afforded the opportunity to care about surface level issues.
Mm-hmm.
Or like if you're on a deployment and you're not even just in a war situation, but you're in a situation where you have the minimum things to survive, like minimal food, minimal water, shelter, resources. So you're put in a situation where that's all you got are the people that are shoulder to shoulder with you. And so you learn how to live in a way that's less like you can't just put a facade on. I mean, maybe you can. But I would imagine that it's probably a little bit easier to spot, like, hey, man, we're all out here, like, why acting like that? We can tell, you know. Or, like, I almost get jealous, like, man, like, I don't think I've ever lived in a way where, like, I was stripped of all these things where I just had to live in front of other people and just be like, man, this really is me for me, other than my marriage, maybe, you know. But, like, I feel like there's something like when I talk to your dad, like, he even shares about, like, with some of the people he's close with, are the dudes that he was on deployment with, and those moments where it's like, yeah, that's all we had.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when somebody got killed and they needed a shoulder to cry on, when something happened back home and they were panicking because their kid was sick but they couldn't go help them, like, we were the support group. It was it. It was us.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I feel like sometimes when I go to the church, I'm like, man, we're so worried about all these image things that it prevents us from getting into the deeper like relational side of it. Because if we sin, then we look a certain way, or if we do a certain type of sin, now we're just a bad Christian. And we kind of, do you see where I'm going, like, with that, where it's just like, and now it kind of puts a barrier in that community because there's just these things.
I would ask the question, do you think that as Christians we're not as close and we put on these fronts because we're not going to battle together like we should be?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we should be going to battle together, right?
Yeah.
We should be doing life together and getting in, and being okay with getting in that ugly, dirty part of our lives and being okay with each other even though you have a dirty part of your life, because I do too. And I think, like, do you think with gangs, they go into war together?
Yeah.
They're warring other gangs.
Yeah.
Whether that's a motorcycle gang or Bloods and Crips kind of gang,
Yeah,
you're going when you're with family, you're going to fight it out, right? Because you're blood, and you're going to fight it out regardless of what the outcome is. But do you think as Christians, because I don't feel like we do that well, we don't go into battle. We could barely get people to help us move.
Yeah.
You know, you're talking about a moving ministry, right? How hard is it to get people to help you move? I remember everybody was out. Oh, yeah, we're going to be there. We're going to be there. Shay moved the whole house by himself because everybody dropped off because nobody's there. Like, there's none of that.
We didn't know them back then. So.
Yeah. This was before Jenny and Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But honestly,
do
you think we're not going into battle?
I don't know. So I think as I'm getting older, trying to, like, I think part of it is selfishness, right? Like, we get caught up in our own lives. We have our own judgments. We have, like, okay, that, like, maybe, like, something I look at, I'd be like, that's not really, like, that big of a deal. Like, should you be using it or doing it? Like, maybe not, but like, that's kind of between you and Jesus. Where other people are like, oh, that's like so horrible. And so I think that's part of it, is there's like all of these weird, unnecessary judgments that like are not biblical, and Jesus really doesn't ever say. So I think that's one part of it. But then the other part too is like, I think we just don't know how. Like, I don't think the church has done a very good job at actually showing people how to live in community and love one another. Because, I mean, even like when Tony was sick last year and in the hospital, there was a handful of people that were willing to like bring your kids here, even though we're all technically in the quarantine, like we're not out of quarantine.
Right.
You know, it was you guys and a few other people that were like, bring your kids here so you can go get to the hospital, and like war in that with us, like texting us, how are you doing? Like, how can we pray for you guys? Do you need growth? Like, you were in that moment with us, just living through it and almost in a sense suffering with us, and then just trying to do the best that you can. Like, normal people don't know how to do that. Like, with our secular friends, like when we do those things, they're like, I didn't, like, you guys don't need to do that. Don't worry about it. Like, we got, and I'm like, no, like, we're going to. Like, this is what Christ calls us to be with. This is community. This is loving your brothers and sisters. And I think, like, you have to be shown that. You have to be taught that. And I just don't think the church has done a good job, intentionally or not. It just hasn't happened.
So you guys made me think of a Bible story. So it's when Jesus, like, so he has all these followers, right? And I forget what the setting was, so I apologize, but he stands up at a meal and he says, whoever drinks my blood and eats my flesh is worthy of following me. And
that's weird.
And people heard that, right? It's a weird dinner party like statement, right? And so because it's weird, the majority of the crowd leaves him,
right.
And his 12 stay behind. And Jesus says to them, so are you guys going to leave too? And Peter speaks up and says, where are we going to go?
Yeah.
Like, you have the words of life. I think it's kind of going back to what you guys were talking about. Like, when you've been through stuff with people, the 12 were with him from day one. Like, he called them out of being fishermen. Like, he called them right out of the sea. He called Matthew away from probably the tax booth, called him out of that. And so, like, they had been rolling with him like hard for the last 3 years, and they were the ones that probably they ate fish together. They probably shared some weird like campfire stories.
Yeah.
Peter probably tripped over a rock, and they're like, Peter, get it, Peter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they've probably been through some stuff over the years, and so when Jesus does something weird, like he stands up and says something weird, they're like, no, we're still rolling with you. And I think maybe because Americans are so mobile, like very few people stay in the same place their whole lives, or stay with the same set of friends for a long time. And I think sometimes Americans just, okay, so this is I'll ask it in form of a question. Do you guys think that this is an American church problem, or do you think it's a big C church problem? Like, do you think Christians in sub-Saharan Africa or the jungles of Brazil have the same problems with community that Americans have with community?
I'd say it depends on the region, because if they're in a big city where they have all these resources and everybody's pulled apart and they don't have the struggles of a small, like, war-torn country, or their culture doesn't speak that way, like, I would say that they have the same problem we do.
Okay.
I feel like that's fair. I mean, yeah, I think it would just depend on what's, like, like what region and where we're talking about. Because I know even you said, like, in Honduras, like, it's completely different. Where were you guys?
When we got away from the city, we were out in like the middle of nowhere.
So tell them while you were in Honduras.
So there's an organization called Living Waters. that the
Look for sponsors.
yeah, yes,
Come
it's
on.
really
We're
cool.
all trying to go on
Yeah.
another
Come
mission
on.
trip.
Yeah, I would go again. It's so
Absolutely.
cool. But they're basically an organization I think originally was just in South America. Now I think they're a little bit more broader than
Yeah,
that.
they're all over the place.
But they drill water wells and help provide fresh water to communities of people who don't have it, because you'd be surprised at the amount of people who die every year from waterborne illnesses, diarrhea, things like that.
Yeah.
And I know in the United States we think water, like why is that important? We can just go to the store and buy it. Well, it's not like that in other countries. You can't just go to a store. They don't exist. There's not convenience stores. Like you can't just go flip the tap on in the house because there's no plumbing.
Yeah.
Like there's still places in the world that are like that. So when we went down there, it was just a little culture shock for me, because like you don't think about that. Like going into the bathroom and flipping on your water to wash your hands. Like they can't do that. They got to walk miles away, collect the water in the morning, bring it in buckets or pails or whatever they have, and then ration it for an amount of time, and then hopefully the water's not bacteria ridden or dirty, because if so, you're
For sure.
you're getting sick. But as far as the community stuff goes, like it was just the people were close. That was how the community survived.
Mm-hmm.
Like so many family members. Too.
Yeah, family members, and like the young were taking care of the old, and the young worked hard, and the old shared the wisdom and took care of kids, and like the school was like right there. It's a community, I was like, wow, you could. I think that's what blew my mind, is like, man, even though down here in a third world country, right, where you guys don't have anything, compared to like what maybe we have in the States, what you do have though is an amazing image of what it really means to be like close knit.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I watched that, and I was jealous of it. Like, man, I have everything in the United States, except for something maybe simple like that, or it was deep like that, where, I mean, the dads would go away into the fields and work, and then the moms took care of everything. But like they worked, it was like weird how it was like in harmony, like it just worked, and they took care of each other. But the conditions were horrible, right? But they still found a way to be close and love one another. And I was like, man, even when the odds are stacked against you, but when you've got nothing else, again, like back to what I was saying earlier, when all the amenities are stripped away, like community is what you have.
Yeah.
And that's how you survive. Mentally, physically, as a family, as just whatever. So I think, as we talk about this, it's like that's something that I would love to see more in the church, is like a church become more community driven, where resources are being shared. We're taking care of, like when you guys took care of our kids when I was sick in the hospital. Like I couldn't do anything, but to know that my children were with somebody I trusted in a time where I'm trying to figure out if I want to make it out of there or not. Like that was huge. And I try to get people to realize, like, when you're just so busy, when you tell somebody, oh, sorry, I'm busy, I can't. Like, man, like, you don't realize what that other person's going through and what that would have meant if you just could have said yes. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's something we try to practice,
Right.
Like,
or just even as simple as like when, so hey man, like, I'll pray for you. Like, what does that even mean? Like, you're going to think about me for the next minute, and then that's it?
And then
like,
I'm gone.
like, that's not, like...
A couple weeks back, I was over in Roseville for training, and one of the guys, I just met him. I didn't even know him. He's another salesman, and he was telling us the story because he was just, you could tell just something was going on. Like, he just had something on his mind. So I asked him, like, are you okay? And he goes, yeah, I just got some stuff going on with my family. I was like, all right, man. But are you good? Because, I mean, he just looked like something was bothering him. He's like, I don't want to get into too deep into it. He's like, but my brother killed my other brother.
Oh, dang.
Oh, I was thinking something like way more basic than that.
My goldfish died.
Something. My car's giving me issues or something, or I don't know. But he tells me the story of how the one brother had mental health issues, and the other brother kind of made him mad. And it was this fight, got out of hand. The brother killed him.
Dang.
Family's distraught, everything like that. And we're in the training room, and I was like, dude, that's horrible. I was like, can I pray for you? And he's like, oh, that'd be great if you could pray for me. I was like, no, I mean like right now. Like, can I pray for you right now?
Yeah.
Because I know myself well enough. I get in the truck, go back home. I'm not going to do it
for sure.
So I did it right there in the moment. Prayed with the guy, and now we still talk every now and then. He kind of sends me a text, checks in.
Built a bridge.
Yeah, So I think living with people in the moment is a huge thing.
Yeah.
If you're going to pray with somebody, pray for them right there.
Yep.
And so I think what you're getting at with this whole like community conversation is it doesn't necessitate a large group of people necessarily. Like community it sounds like more is just it's the opposite of apathy. It's just caring for people and being involved in their lives in a way that's not surfacey.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where. So when you guys came to our community group back in the day, we were at a point where. So I'm from the South. Christina, even though she's from Cali, don't hold that against her. One, two. She has a Southern soul, and so when we have always, for the duration of our marriage, coming up on 20 years now.
This year.
We said our dinner table will be a place for people to be a part of our family, and so it's not a we don't want to, like, if you come to our table, you're not a friend, you're a family member, and so we worked hard, especially like so when you guys came to our community group, we were kind of building that community group up because we had done community groups in the past. And community group is basically like a life group. Maybe you guys have heard that term before, but it's basically it's not the church. It's like you meet in a home and you guys
do life together.
Yeah, I mean, but you share meals and
do life together.
Oh my gosh, I hate that term. But yeah, you come together. You love one another well. You feed one another, and really we said our dinner table is going to be the hub of that, and so
it is.
Yeah, and we really strove for that.
We had the rule: if you guys have been here more than twice, you're family.
Yeah, your family.
Help yourself to whatever you want. If you need something out the fridge or the cabinets, the drink, the cups,
don't
whatever.
Knock, just come in.
Yeah,
and
don't ever knock.
I think what that did though, it knocked down some serious barriers because it's weird to go in somebody else's house. That you don't know.
We had never experienced that before, ever.
Wow.
Not one time. Like, was there anyone who ever was like, "Come sit with us," like, "Come be a part of what we're doing." Like, obviously, we've had dinner at people's houses and they've hosted and it was very nice or whatever. But like, the way that you guys opened up your home and your lives to us was like, I've never experienced that before.
Yeah. And it was honestly intentional because me being from the South, I know pretty much every major decision that happens over some kind of meal. And I can even look at that in the Bible. Pretty much all the scenes you see is around some kind of food or festival. Israel was awesome about holding multiple festivals a year, multi-day celebrations of let's get our community together and celebrate the fact that we are a part of one another's lives. And we tried to model that. We tried to incorporate that. But as I'm looking at like church in America, there seems to be a disconnect with that. There seems to be a so we were having this conversation earlier about the corporate nature of the church and how it's mostly business driven. But as you look at the New Testament on how the church started, it was anything but. It was you were after survival. Like one generation later, they were being hunted down by Nero, and there seems to be a correlation between those two. So here's my proposition, and me and Tony kind of already talked about it a little bit, so I know he disagrees, so this is going to be fun. I think God is removing his presence from the American church. I think God is kind of pulling back a little bit, and I think you're starting to see the effects of it. And so the the lack of community is supposed to be what the church looks like, but that's not what it looks like. It looks like a business. The church is compromising on some very serious social issues, and it's failing. And if we look at places like Honduras, we look at China, we look at Africa, those churches are thriving.
Right.
India, those churches are thriving.
Yeah.
And so I went to India, and they had these little pocket communities where they shared life like that. I went down to El Salvador. They were shared, like if we dug a well up on the mountain, and actually we dedicated it. They had already drilled it, but when we came back down from doing the dedication, the Christian community came together and cut us up like a jackfruit, and the jackfruit was like this. It was like a baby. Like this joker was like huge, and the guy was carrying it like this. And
Shay wants to get when they sell them at Safeway right now, and they're like,
like
this.
3
They're
times.
bigger than a watermelon.
It was 3 times that size it was.
Right.
And so, but the whole community came out and shared it.
Oh, wow.
And so there's like this up on the mountain. They have one well for like 10 homes, and so they're sharing those resources.
Yeah.
You come down. They cut up one jackfruit for the whole community and allowed us to share with them.
That's huge.
And so it's huge, right?
Because this is their resources. This is all they have,
Yeah.
and they're sharing it with you.
I don't think the American church does that.
No.
So my proposition is God is pulling back from the American church, and I think we're starting to see the effects of it. What do you
What
think?
does that have to do? Where's community in that?
Where's community in that?
Yeah.
Community is
Is
one of
like
the
a
it's one of the it's one of the telltale
Pillars?
signs. It's one of the telltale signs of what the Christian church looks like, and we're not doing it. For the most part, the church in America isn't doing it well.
No.
And the reason I could tell is like, just like you guys said, you've never been to somebody else's home where they've done that, or people are really weirded out by walking to somebody else's home.
Yeah.
I think it's really weird, and we've been to some people's houses where our kids weren't welcome.
Yeah.
That's a
And
thing.
it's weird, and the
It
kids
is.
got to be quiet, and it's just strange.
Yeah.
It's like this weird thing, but they do it for the sake of holiness. And
Yeah.
they say, but no, this is a sacred space, and we're doing all these things, and it makes Christianity weird.
Sorry, I just had a thought. Do you think that loss of community has to do because we've had such a loss of the family structure?
Ooh, talk about it. What do you mean?
So I mean, think about it. So if we don't have families, so many of us, I think actually all of us have divorced parents here, right?
Yeah, mine would never
Well,
marry.
Yeah, okay.
Mine wasn't
You don't
divorced,
even know
mine
your
was-
dad. My parents. Oh.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, stop. So it just makes me wonder, we don't really have a family structure anymore. So most parents are split. I mean, co-parenting is so common, right? We kind of jokingly talk about this, right? So we have some family members who, they only have their kids every other week, right? And so I kind of and this is, anyways, I don't want to go down that route. So you don't have that structure of family. You don't have 2 parents who are there with their kids, who are present in their lives. So if those things aren't happening, as we grow up as an adult, how would we know to give that? Right? And if we're not getting it from the church, it's just the way that we grew up.
Yeah.
We grew up being selfish because we didn't have parents because they were working. They had to work. So we grew up taking care of ourselves, doing what we want. Why would I think about my neighbor when I'm focused
community
on
of latchkey kids?
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
So
Honestly, I've seen though people with 2-parent homes that still have the same problem.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
And very strong 2-parent homes, and both parents are Christians.
To circle back to where the disagreement, where you would pitch it as God is withdrawing himself.
Yeah.
Whereas I see it more as Christ is saying, no, I'm giving you, like Romans 1. You want to deny me? You want what your heart wants? I'm going to give you over to it.
Yeah.
And so it's not that he's left. It's not that he's gone away. He's there. If we repent and turn to him, he's right there. But he's made it very clear, then have your sin, have your devices, but you won't have me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I would say I see that happening.
And the only reason I think I say it that way is because I look at the history of the world and these Christian capitals that we've had throughout history. Same thing happened to Rome. when Rome started divulging into hypersexual activities, when they started caring less and less about their people, as they started like really heavily crucifying Christians.
Sure.
When the Christian community exited Rome because they couldn't find community,
yeah.
I think you started to see like the downfall morally. The downfall morally, I think it was a byproduct of God kind of. I don't think we're completely off. I think it could be God just kind of gives people over to their sin.
Yeah.
But I think in certain ways with nations, he kind of removes himself. He just kind of like, okay, almost like a Sodom and Gomorrah thing, where I'm gonna take my people, and y'all can have it, and you can have the full you can have the full measure of what you want for your lives. And so, America right now is in a mode where we want this freedom away from God.
Yeah.
And God is like, let me show you what that looks like in community then.
Mm-hmm.
Let me show you what that looks like for your families. Let me show you what that looks like for this thing you call the Constitution. Let me show you what that looks like when the Constitution says you have inalienable rights, meaning they're given to you by God. And then you have a culture that says, no, we want freedom from that.
Right.
And what we'll put in its place is we want people to be governed by an elite.
Yeah.
Like we start having all these kind of problems, and I think it's a byproduct of God having kind of removed some of His presence from the people. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm really smart enough to answer that question.
No.
Like, I feel like it's such a big thing because whether you want to say
talk about my friend like that.
I'm sorry. Like, just sometimes I'm like, let's not. Like, I don't know. I feel like whether you say like God's handing him over or removing himself, like at the end of the day, like we're still stuck, you know. Like, so I think that's why I'm like, I don't know if I'm smart enough to answer that question, but the result is the same.
Yeah.
Either way, we're just stuck here to fight with sin
consistently, there's a choice that needs to be made.
Talk about the choice.
So I think there would be a choice that needs to be made. If either way, like the way you and I are saying it, whether God has removed himself or given people over their sin, the choice that I think that would need to be made is like for the Christian anyway, is do I stay in this community that's depraved? Or do we leave?
You're talking about like Amish, like
yeah, that's what you said. Yeah, that's what. Yeah. But yeah, seriously, right? Like,
I would say that
at what point does the Christian go like, I can't submit to this government. I can't submit to this employer in order to be a part of this economy. You know, to have the dollar, to be a part of this society. I can't.
Even that. In order for me to live my way, a Christian way of life, the way the Bible commands me to live it,
you can't live there.
Yeah.
But at what point do you just like, well, all right, this is what's going to... I have to go. Because this isn't going to change. Right? You can legislate for it. You can vote for it. You can do all these things because we're in the United States. That's how we change things.
Yeah.
And if society just goes, nah, that's not how we want to live. But if you're going to be a part of society, this is how you have to live. At what point are you like, yeah, I can't do that?
So then what happens to like telling people the gospel? Like the whole community is, yeah, like what? So what happens then? Or like living in the world but not being part of it? Like that's I don't know what the line is on that.
I don't know, because like if you were around family or friends that continually do the same thing over and over, and you've told them the gospel, let's say, or you've, been there as a solid pillar for them, a light for Jesus, and they keep doing the same things over, do you eventually, especially if it's hurting you directly or your kids, right? Let's say your kids, because we all know when our kids stand up, we're like mama bears, and we're going to okay, you can't do that around our kids anymore. So at what point are you going to stop and say, I've got to remove myself from the situation, and I'm not going to be there anymore?
Yeah.
Or you go, I'm going to be there from a distance.
So I guess maybe the question is, how do you live out the Great Commission from a distance?
Like this, right here.
No, but there's some truth to that, right?
Yeah.
Like, technology has afforded us an opportunity to live out the gospel in a way that ancients didn't have. And so we literally have access to the world. There's folks, shout out to the couple folks that are watching, like, out in Germany. Like, I got a couple folks listening in Germany.
All right.
I got a couple folks listening out in UK. And so, literally, I've never met these people.
Yeah.
Me living in little old Podunk, Reno, Nevada. Sorry, I know you guys are from here.
No offense.
But, I know, my bad.
Wow.
We have the opportunity to reach the ends of the earth.
Yeah.
Right
From
now.
here.
Right now. But are we sophisticated enough in our understanding of the gospel to reach out to the world?
Yeah.
Yes.
So now we got to know what we're doing. We got to know what we're talking about. We can't be the community of people that just, like, we've been to some community groups where they just sit down and just fellowship.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of a social club, really. There's no real, like, pouring into the scriptures. How's the scripture a fulfillment of this scripture? How does that lead us to where we are today? What are these issues like with the second coming of Christ, and why does that matter for me today? Like, I don't think we tackle these hard issues. We expect, like, heavy theologians to do all the work, and then we go and listen to them, but we don't really study it for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're to communicate, so I'll say this. I think this is the first time in American history where America is no longer a Christian nation.
Yeah.
I think we started off when Christians were like, I can go to the grocery store, and that person at the grocery store knows who Jesus is too.
Yeah.
And it's becoming less and less for us.
And less, yeah.
And
especially on the West Coast. Especially
on the West Coast where we are. Like, East Coast, I think, especially in the South, they're still hanging on. So Tony just got back from South Carolina, and he was like, that was just different. And it is. The Bible Belt is just different.
Yeah.
It's you could throw a rock, and you could throw a feather and hit another Christian.
Yeah.
Honestly. Like, you don't have to go far.
I mean, there's people in public that would say, "Oh, God bless."
Yeah, yeah.
You don't get that out here.
You don't get that out here. So, that was probably about a 10-minute break while the kids were having a meltdown. So, this is a fun conversation though. Like, and we're definitely going to have Tony and Jenny back on, because I know that was an abrupt stop. And but what I want to do right now, as we start to close out, because I think this aspect of community is so essential to the gospel message, and how we present ourselves to the world. Because the Bible talks about when we're saved, it's not like we're a part of a decentralized, like, fun club. We're the body of Christ now, and so we are made in the image of God, who's a community in and of itself. And then when we're saved by Christ, like when he comes and he justifies us. He lives a perfect life, following the law that we couldn't follow, and then when he dies, he removes that barrier, that weirdness of being able to step into somebody's home. Like, he removes that so that now we can come into God's community, that he's already existed triune within himself. We now become a part of the body of Christ. And so right there, in the midst of the gospel is this community that we're a part of. What do you guys think are some, like, tangible ways that we can have these Christian communities where the world doesn't, like where a non-believer could come in and say, man, those people are weird and I don't want to go back. Like, I feel like a community group is almost like the first step of being in this Christian community. Like, what are some ways that as we look at the world, that we can do it better than them?
It's funny because, God is pretty clear. He's like, where two or more gather in my name,
I'm right there.
He clearly states it doesn't have to be big, but if you're gathering with a group of people, you're gathering for me. Like, if you're there, like what we do, you guys come over fairly regularly, and we talk about the Bible in some form or fashion, but it's all organic, right? You don't have these weird, like, what do we talk about? Or just organic conversations, having people in your home and not making it awkward or weird. And
We'll just be becoming better artists of hospitality. Actually opening up your home, living a life where people can be a part of it. Like, hospitality isn't just happenstance. It's not an accident.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you want to be a hospitable person, there's some intentionality behind that, right? Like having food in the fridge so that when somebody stops by, like, you can throw something on the grill and just kind of, oh, yeah, you're here, you're going through a hard time. Yeah, that's fine. Don't worry about going to get dinner. We'll just do it here, right? Like, you can do those types of things. I think we're working on those types of things, but even we're not that great at it. Like, if somebody stops by, it's a thing. We got to figure it out, you know? So, yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't know tangible ways. That's probably kind of the point of this conversation, is trying to find those tangible ways to build solid community.
I think sometimes, like, just not making it so, like, Christian, right? So, like our son, so if he's playing baseball, we're involved in the baseball team. So we're going to bring snack, or we're going to talk to the mom and dads that are around. Like, we're not just going to be weird and sit on the bench and, like, not talk to the person right there, or not cheer for the other kids. Like, you can have that dialogue and just don't be, like, weird about it. Like, make the first step in having a conversation and inviting someone over. And I think maybe the second thing is, like, just stop, like, being fake. I think there's this really bad problem that Christians have of just trying to make sure their life is all together. And I think if we just did better about, like, no, like, actually, I'm not doing great and work sucked today. Like, I'm not in, like, a happy mood, and, like, or whatever, like, we got in a fight, or I yelled at my kids, or just, like, making it like, hey, like, we're all humans. Like, we're not, like, doing anything differently other than the fact that we rely on Christ, and we know that He forgives us, and He's helping us and restoring us and showing us grace so that we can give other people grace. But I think
it's funny you say that, because there was something that I don't remember if it was you that was being told this, or if it was me that was being told this, or if it was us together as a couple, but somebody told us. Yeah, there you go. Somebody told us at some point or another, like, you have to get to a point where you allow people, especially when you're hurting, that you allow people to care for you. So it's not just us being organic and letting people come into our homes, but when people want to help, when people want to, like, care for you, like when you're in hospital, don't just be like,
way humbling.
Don't just be like, I'm okay. We don't need anything. You have to allow people to come into your life and care for you, because it's not just blessing you, it's blessing them to care for you in that way. And I think that we are so prideful that we are quick to say, oh, I'm good. We're fine. We're fine. We don't need anything. We don't need anybody. Because we're prideful, right? And that's what our families have taught us, especially those of us that have been raised in single parent homes, right? You got to get it all done by yourself. You don't need anybody else. You just have to do what you do. And because of that, we lose community, right? We don't have those tight-knit communities like down in India or Honduras or El Salvador, that all those places that you guys have been, that depend on each other, and they're all humbled, and they're all living that, like, I can't do it by myself. And because we have this pride welled up within us, we can't even admit that we need other people, because we do. Whether we want to admit it or not, we need other people to come in and live this life with us and help us out sometimes. And so we have to be able to be let that pride aside and allow people to come into our lives and care for us. I remember even when we were doing community, there was a while that I was like, no, don't do the dishes. I'm fine. I got it. And then I was like, no, like we're allowing people to bless us by coming in and serving our community. And there's a dog. By serving our community, you know, they're doing their part by doing the dishes for us after community group, or cleaning up, or cleaning the playroom because the kids. And then it got to a point like, well, no, everybody needs to take responsibility of this group. It can't just be us cleaning up after all the kids and all the toys and everything else that's around. We need to make sure that it, like, everybody is pulling their weight, right? And everybody is giving something. It's not just taking. We all have to give too. So I feel like that's a big one too. It's just allowing people to do that.
Yeah. And I think if I were to add anything to any of those, I think we face a very real enemy in this world with the prince of the power in the air. And he is great at setting up counterfeits to what the church is supposed to look like. And so that's where you see like a gang looking more like a community than the church does, because Satan wants to set it up in a way that's like, this is more attractive over here. And so like, I would, if I were to add like a very real proposition, if you will, understanding like we have a very real enemy that's trying to counterfeit everything that God has set up. And so we have to be, we have to know who that enemy is. We have to know his tactics. We got to pray, man. We have to pray. We have to like see that is our defense. That's also our offense. But we have to pray. We have to see that Satan is going to set up all these counterfeits. So instead of going to a Christian counselor, we got Christians going to secular counselors and giving them secular advice. Instead of people going to a community group, they'll go to a run club, or they'll go online, or they'll go to like yoga. They'll go to all these other things. When I need help with moving, I won't go to my Christian friends. I'm gonna go to my friends that are out in the world
because they're the ones that are there for me a lot of times.
And Satan is great at it. He's crafty, and Christians are falling for it, and the church needs to pray. We got to understand the enemy's tactics, and we have to pray. And so,
and be willing to get into the grimy.
That's
part of the Christian walk, is to get into the grimy. And if we're not willing to do that as Christians, then we have no business being a Christian.
Then we're going to lose.
Because we're not doing what God has called us to do.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about like seeing somebody laying in the street. Are we going to be the people that walk past? Or are we going to be the people that put him up in a room? Even though we don't necessarily like him, right? We're going to put him up in a room. We're going to pay for his dinner. We're going to get him off the street because he's God's child laying in the street.
Man, there's so much more we could talk about with this subject, but we're going to have to cut it for tonight because the natives are getting restless, and now they've brought in their strange animals. And but man, this was so fun. Thank you guys so much for coming on and chopping it up with us. This is what we do. Like everything that we talk about all leads back to Christ, and Jesus needs his church to represent who he is to the world. And a big part of who God is, he's a triune community in and of himself. And the church has to understand how to come together and understand that even when we fail, we pray and we cry out to God, and we rely on the fact that Christ came and paid the debt for all of our shortcomings, including those that keep us away from one another. So, man, this was so fun. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please make sure to tell all your friends what we're doing over here. If you're watching on YouTube, please like, share, comment, subscribe. If you're listening on the podcast, please keep tuning back in. All this stuff is helping. But love y'all. Definitely love y'all. And until next time, grace and peace.